They said she was insane, that no decent woman would ever raise an Apache child, especially one found after a bloody skirmish. But what made her hold on tighter wasn't just stubbornness. It was something the girl did that no one expected. And when the child finally spoke her first word, even her harshest critics were left speechless. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The harsh winter wind whipped across the Arizona territory, carrying dust and despair in equal measure. Martha Holloway stood on the porch of her modest homestead, squinting at the horizon where dark clouds gathered. It had been 3 years since she lost her husband to tuberculosis, leaving her alone on their small ranch 10 miles outside of Tucson. Another storm coming, she muttered to herself, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. At 42, Martha's face was etched with lines that spoke of both sorrow and determination. Her auburn hair, once vibrant, now carried streaks of gray that she made no attempt to hide. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her attention. Sheriff Daniels appeared, his expression grim as usual when he visited Martha's property. "Afternoon, Mrs. Holloway," he called, tipping his hat slightly. "Sheriff," Martha acknowledged with a curt nod. Their relationship had been strained since her husband's passing. Many in town believed a woman had no business running a ranch alone. "Came to warn you about trouble. Army had a skirmish with some Apache about 20 miles south. Stragglers might come this way." Martha's jaw tightened. "I appreciate the warning, but I can handle myself." The sheriff dismounted, shaking his head. "This isn't about your stubbornness, Martha. It's dangerous out here for a lone woman. Been dangerous for 3 years, Sheriff, yet here I stand." Before he could respond, a distant sound caught there. Attention, a child's cry carried on the wind. Martha was moving before she could think, striding toward the source with purpose. "Martha, wait!" Sheriff Daniels called after her, but she ignored him. Beyond the edge of her property, Martha found the source of the cries. A small Apache girl, no more than 4 years old, huddled beside the body of a woman. Even from a distance, Martha could see the woman was beyond help, blood staining the earth beneath her. The child looked up with terrified eyes, her small frame trembling. Martha approached slowly, hands open to show she meant no harm. "It's all right," she said softly, knowing the girl likely wouldn't understand her words but hoping her tone might provide some comfort. Sheriff Daniels caught up, his hand instinctively moving to his holster when he saw the child. "Apache," he muttered, as if that single word explained everything. "She's a child, Sheriff," Martha said firmly, kneeling beside the girl. "A terrified, orphaned child. The reservation's where she belongs. I'll take her to Fort Lowell tomorrow." Martha studied the girl's tear-streaked face, noting the intelligence behind those frightened eyes. Something inside her, dormant since her husband's death, stirred to life. "No," Martha said. "Decision made. She stays with me." "Have you lost your mind, woman?" Sheriff Daniels sputtered. "That's an Apache child. Her people killed 3 settlers last month. And how many of her people have we killed?" Martha challenged, carefully gathering the small girl into her arms. The child resisted at first, then collapsed against Martha's chest, exhaustion overcoming fear. "The town won't stand for this," he warned. "Then the town can come tell me themselves." Martha turned toward her home, the child's weight surprisingly light in her arms. Her mother's body deserves a proper burial. "Will you help with that at least?" The sheriff looked conflicted but finally nodded. "I'll see to it." "But Martha, you're making a mistake that could cost you everything." "Wouldn't be the first time someone thought that about me," she replied, continuing toward the house. That evening, after bathing the silent child and dressing her in an old nightgown that hung like a tent on her tiny frame, Martha sat by the fire, watching the girl watch her. Neither spoke, but something unspoken passed between them. "I suppose you need a name," Martha finally said. At least one I can call you until you decide to tell me your real one. The girl's dark eyes reflected the dancing flames. Hope, Martha decided. I'll call you Hope. Outside, the storm finally broke, rain lashing against the windows as if nature itself objected to Martha's decision. But inside, for the first time in years, Martha felt the warm ember of purpose glowing in her chest. Rest now, she whispered to the child who had already fallen asleep. Tomorrow will bring its own troubles. As Martha prepared for bed, she knew the sheriff was right about one thing. The town wouldn't accept her decision easily. Tucson in 1878 had little tolerance for those who defied convention, especially when it came to relations with the Apache. But Martha Holloway had stopped caring about the town's approval long ago. The child stirred in her sleep, murmuring words in a language Martha didn't understand. Gently, she placed a hand on the girl's forehead, feeling a slight fever. We'll face them together, little one, she promised quietly, wondering if she had finally lost her mind as the sheriff. Word spread quickly through Tucson about Martha Holloway and the Apache child. By midday, Martha could feel the stairs as she guided her wagon down the main street. Hope sitting rigidly beside her, eyes wide with apprehension. Just groceries. And supplies, Martha assured the girl, though she knew Hope couldn't understand her words. Then straight home. Outside Henderson's general store, a small group of men had gathered. Martha recognized Jacob Turner, whose brother had been killed in an Apache raid the previous summer. Afternoon, gentlemen. Martha greeted them with forced casualness as she stepped down from the wagon, helping Hope afterward. This the savage you've taken in? Turner asked, his voice carrying so others would hear. Martha placed a protective hand on Hope's shoulder. This is a child who lost her mother, Mr. Turner. Nothing more, nothing less. Apache killed my brother, Turner said, stepping closer. Left his wife a widow, his children fatherless. I'm sorry for your loss, Martha replied evenly. But this child didn't kill anyone. Reverend Collins, who had been watching the exchange from the boardwalk, approached with measured steps. Mrs. Holloway, perhaps we could discuss this matter after Sunday service. There are concerns. I'm sure there are, Reverend, Martha interrupted. But I didn't come for counsel today, just supplies. Hope pressed against Martha's skirts, sensing the hostility around her. Martha urged her forward into the store, aware of the whispers that followed them. Inside, Mrs. Henderson watched them with undisguised suspicion, her usual friendly smile nowhere to be seen. Just the essentials today, Eleanor, Martha said, ignoring the woman's expression. You know what people are saying, don't you? Mrs. Henderson asked, leaning across the counter. That you've lost your mind with grief. First refusing to sell the ranch after Thomas died, now taking in an Apache child. Martha continued selecting items from the shelves. And what do you think, Eleanor? I think, the storekeeper said carefully, that grief does strange things to a person's judgment. Hope had wandered to a display of colorful fabrics, her small hand reaching out to touch a bright red calico. Martha watched as Mrs. Henderson tensed, as if expecting the child to steal or damage the goods. We'll take 2 yards of that red calico as well, Martha decided impulsively. The child needs proper clothes. Mrs. Henderson's lips pressed into a thin line as she cut the fabric. That'll be $4.75 total. Martha counted out the money, aware it was more than her usual bill. Price gouging was the least of the trouble she'd expected. As they loaded the supplies, Sheriff Daniels approached on horseback. Martha, he called, dismounting. A word? Martha sighed. What now, Sheriff? Army's asking questions about the Apache woman we buried. Lieutenant Wilson's riding out to your place tomorrow. Martha felt a chill despite the warm day. What do they want? Information, they say. But Martha, he lowered his voice, there's talk of the girl being connected to Chief Victorio's band. If that's true. Hope looked up at the mention of Victorio. her eyes showing a flash of recognition. "She's staying with me," Martha stated firmly. The sheriff shook his head. "You're swimming against the current, Martha. Sooner or later, it'll sweep you under." "Then I'll drown standing up," she replied, helping Hope into the wagon. The return journey was silent, with Hope occasionally glancing at Martha as if trying to solve a puzzle. When they reached the ranch, Martha was surprised to find Dr. Samuel Gray waiting on her porch. "Samuel," she greeted him, genuinely pleased to see the elderly doctor who had been her husband's friend. "What brings you out here?" "Word travels fast," he said, helping her down from the wagon. "Thought I'd check on you and meet this child I've been hearing about." Hope remained in the wagon, watching Dr. Gray with wary eyes. "It's all right," Martha encouraged her. "Dr. Gray is a friend." Inside, after settling Hope with some wooden blocks Thomas had carved years ago for children they never had, Martha and Dr. Gray spoke in hushed tones. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest, Martha," he said, accepting a cup of coffee. "Seems that way. The child appears healthy enough, though I'd like to examine her properly." Martha nodded. "She had a slight fever last night, but it's gone now." Dr. Gray studied Martha over his spectacles. "It's not the child's health I'm most concerned about. Taking her in... It's dangerous, Martha. Not just from the townsfolk. If her people come looking for her, her mother is dead, Samuel. I found no sign of others." "Apache don't abandon their children," he said gently. "If she belongs to Victorio's band, as people are suggesting, they'll come for her." Martha watched Hope arranging the blocks with careful precision. "And if they do? Then you'll have a choice to make," Dr. Gray said, his voice heavy with concern. "One that could have grave consequences either way." Later, as Martha prepared a simple stew for dinner, she caught Hope staring at her father's old fiddle hanging on the wall. "That was Thomas's," Martha explained, taking it down. "My husband. He used to play every evening." On impulse, she drew the bow across the strings. The sound made Hope's eyes widen, a small smile appearing for the first time since Martha had found her. "You like music?" Martha asked, playing a simple tune. Hope moved closer, fascinated by the instrument. For a moment, the weight of the day's encounters lifted as Martha played and the child listened, their shared appreciation of the music creating a bridge between their worlds. That night, as a coyote howled in the distance, Martha lay awake wondering what Lieutenant James Wilson arrived precisely at 10 the following morning, his blue uniform immaculate despite the dusty ride. 2 soldiers accompanied him, remaining mounted while the lieutenant dismounted at Martha's gate. "Mrs. Holloway," he greeted, her with a stiff nod. "I understand you've taken in an Apache child." Martha stood on her porch, Hope partially hidden behind her skirts. "I have, Lieutenant. Her name is Hope." "That's not her name," Wilson said dismissively. "And I need to ask her some questions." "She doesn't speak English," Martha replied. "And she's traumatized. I doubt she'd tell you anything." Wilson's expression hardened. "Ma'am, we have reason to believe this child may be connected to Vittorio's band. They've raided 3 settlements in the past month." "She's 4 years old, Lieutenant. Hardly a threat to national security." "Nevertheless," he insisted, "I have my orders." Martha reluctantly stepped aside, allowing Wilson to enter. Hope pressed herself against the wall, eyes fixed on the lieutenant's uniform. Wilson crouched down, studying the child. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice marginally softer. Hope remained silent, her small chest rising and falling rapidly. "Ask where her people are camped," Wilson instructed Martha, as if she might somehow have better luck. "I don't speak Apache, Lieutenant," Martha reminded him. "And even if I did, I wouldn't use a child to lead soldiers to her people." Wilson stood, jaw tightening. "Mrs. Holloway, this isn't a game. Lives are at stake." "Yes," Martha agreed, "including hers." The lieutenant paced the small room, boots heavy on the wooden floor. "The Army could compel you to surrender the child to our custody. On what grounds? Martha challenged. For her own protection, if nothing else. An Apache child living with a white woman. It's not natural, not safe for either of you. Martha laughed without humor. And she'd be safer at Fort Lowell? Among soldiers who hate her people. Wilson's expression revealed he hadn't considered this perspective. There are Indian agents who would send her to a reservation where she knows no one, Martha finished for him. She stays with me, Lieutenant. Before Wilson could respond, Hope surprised them both by speaking, not in English, but in her native tongue, a stream of words directed at the lieutenant with unexpected force for such a small child. Wilson frowned. What did she say? I told you, I don't speak Apache, Martha replied, though she suspected from Hope's tone that the words weren't friendly. We'll return tomorrow, Wilson said finally, with someone who can translate. In the meantime, Mrs. Holloway, I strongly suggest you reconsider your position. After the soldiers departed, Martha found Hope sitting cross-legged before the small shelf where Martha kept her few books. The child was carefully turning pages of an illustrated Bible, studying the pictures with intense concentration. You're full of surprises, aren't you? Martha said, sitting beside her. Hope looked up, then pointed to an illustration of Moses in the bulrushes. That's Moses, Martha explained, knowing the girl couldn't understand. His mother put him in a basket to save his life. Hope traced the baby's face with her finger, then looked at Martha with an expression that seemed too wise for her years. Yes, Martha whispered, suddenly understanding. I suppose we do have something in common with that story. That afternoon, Dr. Gray returned as promised, bringing with him a small rag doll that had belonged to his granddaughter. Thought she might like this, he said, offering the doll to Hope, who accepted it with solemn dignity. While examining the child, Dr. Gray spoke quietly to Martha. Army's serious about this, Martha. Wilson sent for a translator from Fort Apache. I expected as much, Martha replied, watching as Hope allowed Dr. Gray to check her ears and throat without protest. She's remarkably healthy, he pronounced. A bit undernourished, but nothing that good food won't fix. Samuel, Martha hesitated. If the Army tries to take her ... The elderly doctor sighed. I don't have that kind of influence, Martha. But I know someone who might help. Judge Hollister is an old friend, and he's no friend to the Army's heavy-handed tactics with the Apache. Would he intervene for a child? Possibly. I'll speak with him. Dr. Gray gathered his medical bag. In the meantime, try teaching her some English. It might help her case if she can communicate. After Dr. Gray left, Martha took Hope outside to the small vegetable garden she maintained. She pointed to each plant, naming it clearly. Tomato, corn, bean. Hope watched, silent but attentive. Water, Martha continued, pouring some from a bucket onto the plants. Sun, grow. To Martha's surprise, Hope pointed to the sky. Sun, she repeated, her accent thick but the word recognizable. Yes, Martha exclaimed. Sun, very good. Hope's face remained serious, but her eyes showed a flicker of pride. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Hope unexpectedly offered the first word of her own. Pointing to the flames, she spoke a word in Apache. Martha opened the door cautiously, rifle still in hand. Sheriff? Daniels eyed the weapon but made no comment. Turner and his friends are planning to ride out here tonight. I've got deputies watching them, but I can't guarantee they'll stay in town. Judge Hollister stepped forward, his silver hair and beard giving him a distinguished appearance. Mrs. Holloway, I'm Judge William Hollister. Dr. Gray has informed me of your situation. Come in, Martha said, lowering the rifle but keeping it close. Once inside, she called softly to Hope, who emerged slowly from her hiding place, clutching the rag doll Dr. Gray had given her. Judge Hollister regarded the child with gentle interest. So this is the young lady causing all the commotion. She's just a child who lost her mother, Martha said simply. Indeed. The judge knelt despite his aging knees, bringing himself to Hope's level. "Hello, young one." To everyone's surprise, Hope stepped forward and studied the judge's face intently before speaking a single word in English. "Hello," Martha gasped. She's been listening when I've been teaching her words, but that's the first time she's used that one. Dr. Gray smiled. "Children absorb language like sponges." Sheriff Daniels cleared his throat. "This is all very touching, but it doesn't solve our immediate problem. Turner's got half a dozen men worked up. They've been drinking since noon. What do you propose, Sheriff?" Martha asked. "Let me take the child to Fort Lowell tonight," he suggested, "just temporarily until things cool down." Martha shook her head firmly. "No." "Mrs. Holloway," Judge Hollister interjected, "I understand your protective instinct, but the sheriff's concern is valid. However," he continued, raising a hand to stop Martha's protest, "I have an alternative suggestion. My home in town has plenty of room, and my wife would welcome the company. You could both stay there until this situation is resolved legally." Martha hesitated. "And how might it be resolved legally, Your Honor?" "I've been studying similar cases," he replied. "There's precedent for formal guardianship of orphan children, regardless of race. It would require a hearing, but with my support and that of respected community members like Dr. Gray." "You would support such an arrangement?" Martha asked. Surprised. Judge Hollister nodded. "I've long believed our treatment of the Apache has been unjust. Small steps toward understanding between our peoples must begin somewhere. Why not with a child?" Hope had been watching this exchange closely. Now she tugged at Martha's skirt and pointed to the judge, saying something in Apache followed by a careful English word. "Friend?" Martha felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes, Hope, friend." The decision made, Martha quickly packed essentials while the men kept watch outside. As she gathered Hope's few belongings, including the red calico she'd begun fashioning into a dress, Martha felt both relief and trepidation. Leaving the ranch, even temporarily, felt like abandoning Thomas's memory. Yet staying might put Hope in danger. As they prepared to depart, riders appeared on the horizon. "That'll be Turner," Sheriff Daniels said grimly. "We need to move now." They hurried to the waiting buggy, Martha clutching Hope's hand tightly. As they pulled away from the ranch, Martha saw the approaching riders clearly, now 6 men. Jacob Turner in the lead, several carrying torches. "They meant to burn us out," she whispered, holding Hope closer. The sheriff nodded grimly. "I'll deal with them. You get to town with the judge." As their buggy sped toward Tucson, Martha glanced back at the only home she'd known for 15 years, wondering if she would find it intact when she returned. Judge Hollister's home proved to be a stately adobe structure near the courthouse. His wife, Eleanor, a kind-faced woman with practical hands, welcomed them without question, immediately setting about making up a room for Martha and Hope. "The child needs a bath," she declared after introductions, "and a proper meal. You both do." Later that evening, with Hope asleep in a real bed for perhaps the first time in her life, Martha sat with the Hollisters in their parlor, explaining everything from the moment she'd found Hope. "The Army translator is expected tomorrow, Judge," Hollister informed her. "Lieutenant Wilson is determined to question the child." "She's only just beginning to trust me," Martha worried. "A stranger questioning her, ... "I'll be present," the judge assured her. "As her temporary legal guardian, you have that right. And what of Turner and his friends?" "The sheriff will handle them," Hollister said with confidence. "Threatening a woman and child, regardless of the child's heritage, is still a crime in this territory." The next morning brought Sheriff Daniels with news. "Turner and his boys didn't find you, so they set fire to your barn instead." "I'm sorry, Martha." Martha closed her eyes briefly. "The house?" "Untouched. My deputies arrived in time to prevent further damage." Martha nodded, accepting this as better than the alternative. "And Turner?" cooling his heels in my jail, along with 2 others. The rest scattered when we arrived. Mid-morning, Lieutenant Wilson arrived with an elderly Apache man, introduced as John Redfeather, a scout who served as translator for the Army. Hope, who had been quietly helping Eleanor Hollister shell peas, stiffened at the sight of Redfeather, then unexpectedly burst into rapid speech in her native tongue, pointing at Martha repeatedly. Redfeather listened, his weathered face impossible to read. When Hope finished, he turned to Lieutenant Wilson. "The child says this woman saved her when her mother was killed by White-Eye soldiers. She says the woman has been kind and is teaching her new words." Wilson frowned. "Ask her about her people. Where is her father, her tribe?" Redfeather exchanged more words with Hope, this conversation longer and more measured. "Her father was killed 2 summers ago," he translated. "Her mother took her away from their band because of fighting among the people. They were alone when soldiers found them. Her mother told her to run and hide. When she came back, her mother was dead, and this woman found her." Martha felt her heart constrict at this confirmation of what she had suspected. "Ask her if she knows which band her people belong to." After more conversation, Redfeather nodded. "She says they were with Chief Victorio until her father's death. Then her mother left with her." Lieutenant Wilson straightened. "That confirms our intelligence. She's from Victorio's band. She's a child who hasn't." As they prepared to return to the ranch, now cleared as safe by the sheriff, Martha thanked the Hollisters for their hospitality. "You've chosen a difficult path," Eleanor Hollister observed, embracing Martha, "but a worthy one." "The most worthwhile things often are difficult," Martha replied, watching as Hope carefully carried her few possessions to the waiting wagon. Judge Hollister handed Martha an official document. "Legal guardianship. If anyone questions your right to raise this child, Apache or white, show them this." Martha tucked the paper carefully into her bag. "Thank you doesn't seem adequate." "Then don't thank me," he replied. "Just raise her to understand both sides of her heritage. Perhaps someday she helped bridge the divide between our peoples." As their wagon pulled away from town, Hope pointed to the distant mountains and spoke a word in Apache, then looked questioningly at Martha. "Mountains," Martha supplied. "Mountains," Hope repeated carefully, then offered her own word again. Martha attempted the Apache word, making Hope smile for the first time, a real smile that transformed her solemn face. "We'll learn together," Martha promised, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "One word at a time."